Good morning and welcome to the Camnet Breakfast Show. I'm Patrick Soko. We'll be together until the hour of 9. Interesting segments lined up for you on the program. But just now, we go to our first segment we call the Morning Boost without wasting much of our time.
Hello guys, it's me Harrison, aka the Fitness Papi. Once again we are here, the place where you can get fit, here at John's Fitness, and we are in conjunction with the Camnet TV. So guys, today I'm going to take you through this supersetting kind of workout. I'm going to do back and shoulder at a go. So here I have my plate, that's 15 kg. Okay, so if you also have it, you can tag along, we go together. So then you pull it, stand straight, 1, slowly, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So make sure as you are pulling it up, you squeeze your back. 7, 8, 9. One more. And 10. So with this, you can do 3 to 4 reps. So that's 10 by 4. With this, so me, I'm just going to do 2 or 3 if I have time. Here we go. Second one.
More music on Trendy Beats.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, come on, 6, 7, 8, 9, one more, and 10. Okay. I think I'm tired. I can't even go beyond that. Guys, you've been with me, Harrison, aka the Fitness Papi, here at John's Fitness. Remember, you can get your gym attire here. This is the place. Bye-bye.
Welcome back. You are watching the Camnet Breakfast Show, Thursday edition, governance and policy as well as politics, with me, Patrick Soko, and Shalon Kalimbula. And we're just looking at our first segment, the Morning Boost, where we get flexing our muscles early in the morning so that we start the day on a healthier note.
Indeed, Patrick, starting the day on a healthy note is always important. And I'm wondering, with those jackets that you're always wearing, do you even try to exercise, Patrick? Even on your chair, like, just do this. But anyways, we surely hope that you've been trying to do these exercises that we bring to you. At least they're about 5-6 minutes workouts.
Yes.
So they are pretty much easier and not so much time consuming, so that you can get back to your usual day-to-day activities. But at least the first task, Patrick, actually is to spread your bed. When you accomplish that, if you stay alone or with whoever, but as long as you step out of bed, you spread it, that's the first task of the day. It actually sets the tone of how much successful you're going to be for the whole day.
Oh.
Yes, because you've accomplished your first task, just spreading the bed. You pray and you do your mini workout like we do 5 minutes, then you kickstart your day.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Then I think that's a good routine that to
It's
just
a good
abide
routine.
to.
It's a good, simple routine that will not even take about 20 minutes or 30 minutes of your time. Wake up, spread your bed, pray, exercise 5 minutes, shower, breakfast, office.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. And what's our next segment?
Our next segment is the health corner, brought to us by the doctors. Remember, we always say this is your segment as well, and you can send us those text messages and tell us how it's been helping you, or some of the topics in the medical sector that you want the doctors to tackle. We will avail the information to them, and then they will focus on that so that you can learn one or two things. But do not rely on this as your main source of information with regards to illnesses. If the symptoms persist, you go to the health facility so that you can have a thorough checkup and make you understand what you are experiencing. Otherwise, for now, let's look at the doctors and what they've brought for us this morning.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Ma Asambang from the Medical Women's Association of Zambia. Today I'll be discussing hepatitis B. Hepatitis B is a global health concern because millions of people die from it. And actually, in reference to Zambia, it has affected many, especially adults who have been born with parents who have been diagnosed with hepatitis B. Now, hepatitis B is a virus that causes an infection to the liver. What happens is the liver's function becomes compromised. You may ask, how so? Well, the liver is responsible for digestion. For example, when you take that tablet of Panadol, your liver is responsible for breaking it down. Perhaps you may even take food. Well, your liver also has a role to play. Perhaps you may also take alcohol. Now that is where your liver dysfunction may become worse. With hepatitis B, it is progressive. What I mean by that is sometimes you may not present with a symptom nor a sign, and it may come as a surprise when you go to the clinic and get diagnosed with hepatitis B. Unlike HIV, hepatitis B requires for a constant follow-up, and it also depends on the case that is presented before us. There are several causes of hepatitis, I might add, and before I delve deeper into hepatitis B, please note that there are 5 types. Aside from hepatitis B, there is A, C, D, and E. Now, you may ask what the difference is between all these types. When it comes to A and C, these are transmitted via fecal-oral route. That simply means that someone can acquire it from contaminated water, or food. Now, when it comes to hepatitis B, D, and E, those are transmitted via blood. So, for example, if someone has sex with someone who has hepatitis B without protection, without a vaccination, then their likelihood of acquiring hepatitis B is very high. Now, speaking back on transmission, aside from sexual intercourse, it is possible to acquire it from an infected needle, syringe, or any sharp object. And so you may find that someone who is a drug user may present with hepatitis B because the virus thrives for approximately 7 days. So it is unlike HIV, whereby the exposure may be a lot less. However, needless to say, it is possible to get the hepatitis B virus via blood. Also to mention, it can be transmitted from mother to child. And so if a mother who presents with hepatitis B does not know that she is positive and her child is not vaccinated, then the likelihood of the baby having hepatitis B is very high. Facts have shown that hepatitis B presents in adults who were perinatally or who had the virus transmitted to them during birth is very high, as opposed to children who had their parents tested and who received the vaccination. It is of note that it can present during adulthood. When it does present during adult, monitoring is necessary. Now, when it comes to hepatitis B, you need to ensure that you obtain the necessary care, which includes diagnosis. It includes having your liver function tested. It includes knowing your hemogram, or in simple terms, your hemoglobin, your platelet count, having an ultrasound done to ensure that your liver is not injured. We also have a fibroscan done for our patients. And so, as I said, hepatitis B cases are unique. There is no one fits all. It is of note that hepatitis B is not curable, but treatable. Studies have shown that a few patients present with a negative hepatitis B test and have an undetectable viral load. However, this does not mean that it cannot present once again. Why do I say so? Because it is possible to be exposed to the virus again. Hence, hepatitis B is not curable. For the most part, it is treatable. It is also of note that hepatitis B can be protected, or rather, prevented against. How so? Via vaccination. And as I mentioned, it is possible for a baby to have the virus if they are not protected within 24 hours. Thank you so much for listening. Once again, I'm Dr. Asambang from the Medical Women's Association of Zambia. Until tomorrow.
Well, there you have it. That was the health corner with the doctors there. They never disappoint, like Sharon always put it. And just now we get to understand how the kwacha is performing against other major convertible currencies. Well, $1 is buying at 17 kwacha 83 ngwe and selling at 18 kwacha 19 ngwe, and the euro is buying at 18 kwacha 97 ngwe and selling at 19 kwacha 35 ngwe. The South African rand is buying at 1 kwacha ngwe and selling at 1 kwacha 06 ngwe, and the Greater British Pound is buying at 21 kwacha 54 ngwe and selling at 21 kwacha 97 ngwe. Those are your money markets.
Indeed, the 29th of December 2022, we are closing the year in style, Patrick, and we're very excited that you two are sharing this platform with us to close the year. So just in case you want to send a shout out, you can even call and let's have a conversation with the guest that we will be ushering in on set very soon. And you can accompany that comment with a shout out to somebody. Let's do this, Patrick.
Exactly, because for you and I, this is our last show in the year 2022.
2022. We'll see you next year.
Show. So probably we're going to see you next year.
We'll see you next year.
You can call, say hi to that special person. And as well as give your perspective on our topic of discussion or any comment on the stories that we'll be zooming in or anything. But we are also giving you an opportunity to just say hi to your lovely. You
can say hi to us too. We want that hi. Hi so much. Hi very much. You know? Let's look at one of the stories that made headlines as of yesterday. Bus drivers in Mumba District, Central Province, have appealed to government to put up a modern shelter at the main bus station. In an interview with Camnet TV, the drivers have observed that since the time their only structure was demolished by Mumba Town Council in 2020, no efforts have been made from government to construct a new one. They have, however, stated that Central Province Minister Credo Nanjoa had a meeting with all the drivers in the district early this year and assured them of erecting a modern structure before the end of 2022. But this is the end, Patrick.
Exactly.
And this is what we were demonstrating yesterday. Let's look at this story.
As the population of a particular area begins to grow, many changes are assured and begin to show in all spheres of life. However, this scenario has not been the case for bus drivers in Mumbo district of Central Province, who have been operating here without a shelter, prompting them to call for government to come to their aid.
So near Buddha now in Kuru station. So that paper will cancel Mometagambia Budala, which was the station here, the main Budala. Masiota station. Mande Butulomba, we will take let me a pesa. Never going to show them to be also the Pamumbwa. It's to let on Bech Caramba. What we are going to show that big bus. Or I send for a bike of Museo. It's complaining.
And District Taxi Drivers Association Chairperson Simon Kafwangula says they had a meeting early this year with Central Province Minister Credo Nanjoa, who assured them of putting up a modern structure before the end of this year, but nothing has materialized.
From the time when this government been up with power, new Don government, by a 1 year plus, up to now, for station, we believe to state around the Rapo, local development areas, the America on Apollon, Sajabati, CDF, Yasevenzaco Passo, would be up to today. Tinkala per station without the shelter, my passengers, Varimumitengo, Makatundu, Mure, Capuera Monga, Elen season, Pamela Tidi, would be able to be consummating a Perikatundu, remember we come my bus.
Meanwhile, Esho Marumbe, a passenger, has noted with concern some challenges children face, especially when it's raining.
So, my passengers zone, but you need up status, but Monga Kwame Napesera pa station pan. Shelter, Paribe, Zeni, Creamy, Paribuino, Panu pa station in Timarokewa. Ulipulokewa, Elo Tibu and Havana Bangon. So Havana Bangon, Kuti, Basita, we end up my shop we have. My shop we have to have
Matches Chewe, Camnet News, Mumboa.
It was kissed down and cars parked for online taxi drivers in Lusaka who Wednesday morning protested over what they term exploitation by application owners such as Yango. Despite many attempts made to get a permit to hold a peaceful protest, police officers informed the drivers that they never received their notice on time and encouraged them not to go ahead with the planned protest.
We we spoke to them, they said, we are not going to allow you going to march. The reason being that there are few police officers who will be able to protect you on the way. In the process, they said, we are not going to cancel your protest. What we are going to do, they told us, you can go and petition the case at Ministry of Transport and Logistics.
However, these drivers feel enough is enough and could not yield to the advice to haunt the protest, but instead decided to go ahead, saying several attempts have been made to engage the relevant authorities, but to no avail.
Because many my taxi drivers, my online taxi drivers, we are a registered organization. Yes. We got a permit for this meeting. Yes. We are not going to make cause confusion. We are not going to cause commotion. We are here. We want our country to hear about this.
The drivers then marched from Manda Hill to the Ministry of Transport and Logistics, where they sought the attention of the Minister Frank Tayali. Seeing the wave of protesters approaching, the security guard attempted to close the gate to prevent the protesters from entering the premises, but his efforts were in vain. For these drivers, their slogan was that Yango must go. Meanwhile, several attempts were made by the officials from the ministry and the police to address the aggrieved drivers, but all efforts failed as they only wanted the minister to address them. After several hours of negotiating, the leaders of the Taxi Drivers Association of Zambia and the ministry came to an agreement that their matter will be resolved in the shortest possible time.
Standing in for the minister and the PS, we've informed them about your petition. We will arrange a meeting. We've gotten the numbers for your leaders, and we will call even the hailing companies so that we can come and have discussion. So that maybe within 2 weeks we'll be able to go.
As drivers, we are giving the minister to get back to us by tomorrow. Listen, the minister is not in his office, he's by the cabinet, we've understood. But by tomorrow, the minister let him give us a feedback. So from now, let us be peacefully, go home, then we'll get back to you. We are all feeling your pinch.
For now, these drivers have given the ministry up to tomorrow, Thursday, 29th December 2022, in which to hear from the minister. Prudence Chota, reporting for Camnet TV News.
Well, those are the two stories that we ran yesterday, and obviously they are setting the tone for today and what probably you expect in our news bulletin. Patrick, people protesting there, the younger drivers. I think at some point we had two guys who were operating from one of these online taxi companies, and they aired out their grievances. They were not happy about the service. They said it was too low compared to how much they put in. I'm not sure about that because I'm part of the beneficiaries of these, and I feel but they are the ones who feel it because they are the ones that are putting in their money, their gas and everything. However, for me as a beneficiary, I still feel the prices are okay and we should stick to that.
Yeah, that's your.
Also, the drivers were complaining of a shelter. They are operating in an open space, and owing to the fact that it's a rainy season, it becomes very difficult for passengers to hop in the buses because they probably get soaked in the process. There is no shelter where they can stand in for some time, wait for the situation to calm down. So those are some of the stories that we ran. Let's take a short break as we usher in our guest on set so that we can have that conversation that obviously you and I have been waiting for.
Camnet Stars Football Club, popularly known as the local national team, is inviting all skillfully gifted, talented and creative soccer players from across Zambia. Ages between 16 and 20 must come, train and join the club. The category of these gifted footballers have the chance to go and market their talent in Europe and USA through Camnet Stars Football Club, a team formed with a vision to produce quality international players. Please do not miss this brief open opportunity given to you. Camnet Stars Football Club could be your gateway to your international soccer career. Venue, Kablonga Boys Secondary School grounds. Date 12th December 2022 to 21st January 2023. Time 09 hours to 11 hours. Your time to shine is now.
Good news, the rains have started. You need to plan your future. Generational wealth is the way to go. Has grafted avocado plants fruiting within 2 to 3 years for sale at only 90 kwacha each, and ordinary avocados at only 45 kwacha each. Contact us on 0979 753010 or 0962 965 883. We are open from 8 hours to 17 hours, Monday to Friday, at Healing Word Ministries International in Ibex Hill, opposite Hilltop Hospital.
Coverage of any breaking or latest news in Zambia and around the world on Camnet Television, call the numbers on your screen. Camnet Television, bringing to your screens fair news, impartial news, credible and reliable news all the time. Get the whole truth on Camnet World News. Camnet Television, not just another channel.
Welcome back. Thank you for still staying with us. Well, right now in studio we've been joined by our guest, and that is the Labour Commissioner, Mr. Givens Muntengwa, who's going to help us discuss various issues pertaining to labour matters and also focus on the recently revised minimum wages. Sharon.
Mr. Muntengwa, welcome to this interview.
Thank you so much.
Feel comfortable. Shake a bit. All right. The day before yesterday, government, the Ministry of Labour, announced a new minimum wage for certain sectors that fall under the bracket. And yesterday we had a bit of a conversation with the callers. They raised quite a number of concerns, and we thought we bring you here so that you can at least make us understand what this whole thing is about, who falls in the bracket, what is even the minimum wage. Probably we don't even understand. Let's start from there. What is a minimum wage?
Well, the minimum wage basically is the lowest wage that is payable to an employee within that class which is prescribed under the statutory instrument. So in this case, what you are saying is that employee who is not unionized must receive that wage. But going forward, it does not stop the employer from adjusting upwards that minimum wage. So if we're talking about the class of employees, we are merely looking at that one who is not unionized, because unionized employees are not vulnerable. They don't need the protection of the law through the promulgation of a statutory instrument. Rather, the platform they use is through their union, which represents them and speak to the employer from time to time for purposes of adjusting the terms and conditions of service.
Who falls in the bracket? Is it everyone? Like, is it all sectors? I know you've mentioned unionized are not part of this, but is everybody who is not unionized falling in this bracket where they need protection from government?
Yeah, so we have to look at it this way. There are three types of minimum wages which were announced in that policy statement. You have the domestic workers, then you have the shop workers and the general workers. So general workers is cross-cutting across all sectors, which means if you fall within the description of a general worker in any sector, then you are falling under that minimum wage. But the bigger picture is in terms of employees generally. We are talking about those employees who fall within those sectors where the unions are non-existent and they do not belong to the unions. Therefore, they cannot reasonably be expected to negotiate for the terms and conditions of service on their own. So they have to ride on the minimum wages which are issued by the minister from time to time after consulting the tripartite partners. Yeah, so to answer in simple terms, we are talking about the employees who do not belong to a union.
Okay. Interesting. Our dear viewers, in case you are just joining us, you are watching the Camnet Breakfast Show interview, and in conversation we have the Labour Commissioner, Mr. Givens Muntengwa, is helping us to discuss various issues pertaining to labour matters as well as the minimum wage. Now, just a ride on the previous question would be that how did you arrive at this minimum wage? Did you just dream it to say they will be getting this much?
Thank you so much. That's a very important question, fundamental to the discussion. We start from the Industrial and Labour Relations Act. Under that Act, Section 79 specifically establishes the Tripartite Consultative Labour Council, which has membership drawn from the employers, employees' representatives, and government on the other hand. So that is the supreme organ within the tripartism in the ministry. So they passed a resolution that it was high time that the minimum wages were reviewed, and they were talking about the three which I already mentioned: the domestic, shopkeepers, general orders, and then by extension they were also contemplating having minimum wages within the ICT world, or the media, so to say, the agriculture sector and the mining sector. But the way the laws are sitting now is we have the Labour Advisory Committee also, which is established under the Employment Code Act number 3 of 2019. And that Labour Advisory Committee equally has representation from the tripartite partners, the employers' representatives, the employees' representatives, and government. And so it is a subcommittee of the TCLC, which I mentioned. So this committee then met and made a further undertaking or resolution to the extent that ZIPA, the Zambia Institute of Policy Analysis and Research, was engaged to carry out research and come up with figures on the mentioned statutory instruments. And when they submitted their report, it then followed that the Labour Advisory Committee met and looked at those figures, then bounced them off to the minister. So that's the process. So there was a research that was undertaken by ZIPA, which is an institution responsible for research, and in that regard they were given the assignment to go out there and come up with figures which were to be adjusted in terms of the minimum wages.
One would wonder, Labour Commissioner, how do you arrive at this amount when the food basket is quite high? You know, it's way too high. For example, a domestic worker is pegged at 1,300 kwacha, the minimum wage, of course, but then the food basket is about 7,000-8,000 kwacha. How do you arrive at these figures? What is the criteria of arriving at a figure?
Yes, like I mentioned, we had to ensure that a professional job was undertaken, and this professional job was to be assigned to an institution that undertakes research from time to time. So our assumption is that when they went out there, they met the appropriate stakeholders who, together with their research questions, came up with those figures. So we are understanding it from that point and not necessarily going ahead of the Institute ZIPA to speak to how accurate the figures are in relation to the prevailing economic circumstances. I think it will be overboard if we begin to speak to the figures, because the figures are given to the committee, and it is not the ministry that sat on its own to look at these figures. Even when the committee, even when the institute brought the figures, they were taken to this committee constituted under the law, which has the employers in their midst and the employees representatives and government representatives. So that tripartism came together, had the social dialogue, and agreed with the submission. So whether or not they are responsive to the food basket, I think that question will be left on understanding that a professional body in terms of research was engaged, and we are convinced that they did a good job, unless otherwise the contrary is proved.
Now, let's also look at the other sectors where we are expecting changes, especially on the minimum wage, the mining and the communication sectors. Also, the pending draft on the Ministry of Agriculture, which has been subjected to further consultation. Now, could we have an estimation or when this would be undertaken? And because the communication sector also remains among those.
Specific media.
The media.
Be specific.
Remains.
Don't forget about the bush. Be specific.
Yes, the media remains marginalized when it comes to those minimum wages, and we want to find out when would that traction be attained.
Well, marginalized indeed, but if we picked it from the historical perspective, we realize that the ministry sent out an invitation to the practitioners yourselves out there to make submissions on what would be the proposed structure for the minimum wages. But unfortunately, we didn't receive a positive response. And so when it was brought to the Labour Advisory Committee, and because the committee felt they were not possessed with the necessary skills to just cherry pick figures from wherever they felt was the best place, a resolution was made that again going forward we should be able to engage ZIPA, so that ZIPA now can follow you to your workplaces, the streets, the freelance journalists, the veteran practitioners, so that we appreciate the structure first and foremost, how the classes are defined or should be defined, what figures must be attached, the allowances, all that. Then at that point, when that research is conducted, it will then be easier for the Labour Advisory Committee to recommend to the Ministry on the proposed minimum wages and conditions of employment. Talking about the mining sector, I think currently you have about 7-8 unions in that sector. So ordinarily, from the understanding or contemplation of the law, I think that sector is protected already, because going by ILO convention, going by the full understanding of labor matters, the employer and the employees' representatives must freely engage. They must have that free bargaining processes, of which it is already happening.
Labour Commissioner, just hold your thought, we pick the score.
They want to interact with you.
Hello, good morning, Charlotte.
Good morning, thank you.
How are you?
Fine, fine. Tell us your name and where you're calling from.
I'm calling from Kiranga, remain anonymous.
Oh, Mr. Anonymous, go ahead with your contribution.
Yeah, to start with, you know, the commissioner here, he doesn't have confidence in what he's talking about. He's feeling shy because he's talking to the Mozambians and to the own employees. But he's just talking like he's just talking to you as journalists. Let him have that bigger of explaining to the Zambians on what the minimum wage means. Because, you know, the problem is that these guys, they are full of Chipantepanti. Shopkeepers or shop owners, honestly speaking, with these economic hardships, can a person manage to pay such an amount of money they're talking about? That's not true. And Mr. Msonda, you should be honest with what you're talking about. Zambians are now trying to look at, when they look at the money, they look at what minimum wage Basha Shila. That is a good part of this government. Only a father and left happen. Only a father and left happen. So, like the way you're asking him a question, he's not telling with the questions and the explanation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Anonymous there. Would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, I think we must be honest with ourselves. If he was listening to the program from the beginning, the definition of minimum wages is the lowest payment given to an employee. And the process of coming up with minimum wages cannot be lumped on government. I think I explained on how the law is couched. Perhaps he wasn't listening again. So for him now to start talking about figures and talk about government, I think he's not aligned to the discussion. When we are looking at national issues, we must not be emotive. We should not put emotions, especially where there's legal framework. It's important to understand where we're driving to and how these processes are managed. Because sometimes information gap creates misapprehension of both the facts and the law. Like in this case, I think he's not aligned to the discussion. He has not been following what questions were raised. And talking about the confidence, I think his judgment is entitled to that. Yeah, but
maybe we can pick it up from where you left from before we picked that call. What were you saying?
We were on
you lost your thoughts.
It did mention the aspect of
mining.
Yes. So we're on the mining.
We're on the mines.
Yeah, so we're on the mining sector. They're talking about the minimum wages. So, like I said, minimum wages apply to those that are not unionized, those that need the protection of the law. They are vulnerable to some extent. Now, when you look at the mining sector, you already have 90% plus employees being unionized. So if they are unionized and they already have this platform to engage the employers and come up with collective agreements, agree to the terms and conditions of service, then how do we begin to talk about minimum wages, which will now take away the workforce from that social dialogue platform to being under the stewardship of the minister who receives recommendations or submissions from the Labour Advisory Committee. So there is therefore need to properly examine the circumstances under which these calls are being made from the mining sector. And in that regard, the Labour Advisory Committee made recommendations that equally the tripartite partners, the employers' representatives, the employees' representatives and government must constitute a team and undertake some form of a tour program to the mining sector and get an appreciation of what exactly the problem is, so that going forward recommendations can be made on exactly how this core must be handled. That's the other thing. So in terms of the agriculture sector, I think owing to its peculiarity, the sector players there felt that the introduction of the minimum wages will only bring some ripples. It will disturb the current prevailing structures where the employers association and the different sector unions already meet to negotiate and come up with these minimum wages within the sector between the players themselves. And because there are not similar circumstances when you are talking in terms of these farmers, it might also create further turbulences, further problems, to the extent that while we want to cure or remedy something, we'll end up now injecting some form of destabilization in the sector. And because of that, I think there was a call, again coming from the farmers, coming from the stakeholders, that we needed more time to appreciate what was happening, so that going forward, if it was desirable that we should have a minimum wage, then that minimum wage must be born out of fundamentals, out of convincing grounds that was the way to go. So I think it was at that stage that it was placed in abeyance, awaiting for those further consultations. So that's where we are.
Interesting. Now, to getting that, in case our dear viewers want to ask pertaining to the minimum wage, they can do so. But we are going to move further with our conversation, in that we also want to take advantage of the Commission and ask other pertinent issues in the sector. Let's zero in on the issue of casualization. I understand the minimum wage also was also aimed at also addressing that same problem way back, because we had this challenge, and we still see tendencies of casualization at the moment. Bwana Commissioner, what constitutes casualization, and how are you working towards completely doing away with this tendency?
Okay, when you look at Section 7 of the Employment Code Act, it prohibits casualization in instances where the services of the employee plays an integral part in the sustenance of the operations of the company. Meaning to say, when you take out those services, the company cannot survive. And those services are continuously present on a daily basis, whereby the company depends on those services, depends on those operations. Then you must not give a job for two, 3 months. You bring another set of employees, then you are casualizing. So the jobs must be long-term, they must be permanent, because even the operations of the company are going into the unforeseeable future. It's a going concern. However, where there is a reasonable or justifiable reason, casualization is permissible. How do I mean? When you look at Zambia Sugar in Mazabuka, or Kafue Sugar, they have a season where they cut the cane. and that season only exists maybe for 3 months. So they would need certain labor for those 3 months, so that after the expiry of those 3 months, they will not need those employees.
Okay, hold your thought, we pick this call. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, Mr. there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay. Brother Commissioner, good morning, sir.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
I'm okay, long time. This is Timunya. Sometimes they came to office when I was trying to push for those NASA guys. You remember?
You were pushing for?
Mr. Kinza, the voice of Monari.
Oh, okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. That is a welcome move to introduce up to the minimum wages. But my biggest worry when I'm saying what is your office is just 2 weeks. In terms of seeing to it that there is the implementation on the ground. You are talking so well, I know you've got the office here and there. And those people that are holding their chairs, they are literally doing nothing. Last year, even within Lusaka, people that are being abused as if you don't have the labor ability. So you got a very senior among the labor commissioner there. Well known, you can address things, and I know you that you are very, very worthy. Really get to do with labor matter. Can you tell even my minister there, President Abakama, he must sometimes leave the office, goes out to see if that these people are not just there holding what they are there. Even yesterday I was on the studio about this which you have told to have been reported to office about this the great film called Camnet, which is the one by the previous top leader. These people they are abusing you at the office. Camnet. Here, what does they are abusing the officers. They are still getting paid 800. I've got a typical example where they were even awarded the contract to provide security to this school. They are given even in charge of contract to provide security in a ZRA, it also is there. They are given even in charge of contract even to provide security management airport. Because it was won by people who are strategic in what is here. So right now, the people, they are not paid in Camnet for the past 2-3 months. I was actually told that they reported the matter, but nothing has actually happened. Last month, there was the vehicle of the Camnet that was carrying officers. It was involved in our own accident. Yeah, Victoria Fort, here in Lincoln. I'm not even a single administrator of Camnet went to reach those people. So, please, can you make sure before that matter? So, shouldn't be something like this. No, this is what I can afford in terms of paying you. So I know some other people will start saying that no, go to your government first, pay you. This is what I can actually afford. So once the government passes what they call it, everybody should actually afford. But next thing is that you actually headquarters there, you disseminate to the junior officer, that is the police their office. That's I've already been giving an example for Nera Africa. If they want unit to what minister, who's there in the office? Most of the time, it's always in the field. Not to these other people. We are always recommend that the place is actually tablet in the immediate. So please, I trust you, and I'll still come over to the office. Think you that's the right thing to get on the ground. Just carry out what the police told the government. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chinza.
So I think we'll proceed, but I'll remind the Commissioner on the question because it's part of what we are discussing. Okay. So he will comment on that perspective later on. So we were talking about casualization, and you were giving us an example of Zambia Sugar in instances when it is allowed.
Yes, in instances when it's allowed is where the job itself is not permanent, it's seasonal. So like a farmer would just plant a maize at a certain period, he might require certain numbers and is allowed to engage. After that, the employees cannot remain on the books of the farmer. So there's just fair reason, and it's quite reasonable that this farmer cannot recruit these people long term because he's not planting on a daily basis. And what are the interventions? So the law empowers us to make an assessment, and if we find that there was loss of certain benefits, we can direct or order the employer to make good of those benefits. We can also direct the employer to change the terms and conditions of service to permanent, so that this casualization is done away with. We've done that in instances, and this is done with appreciation that in some instances the employer might not know how the law is couched. So there is even some form of orientation, because in the labor market, you don't have to injure the employers. You don't have to make the employers be pitted against the employees so that now they start seeing the employees as enemies. Rather, you must have an approach where you recognize that they must remain in business for the jobs to be available. And for that to happen, you must then be able to walk them through the provisions of the law and the punishments or sanctions that are provided by the law, so that when you leave, they will become better employees. You will not leave calamities where people will start firing employees for no apparent reason, and all of a sudden you have so many cases. Your office is inundated with so many cases of dismissals. No. So our approach is to ensure that the scales are balancing, to ensure that there is a perfect balance between the employer's interests and the employee's interests. The employee must not abuse the company, meaning to say the employee must be on time for work, the employee must put enough efforts, the employee must be able to own the company. And similarly, management, the board of directors, the owners, must also ensure that the employee is properly remunerated for the efforts that the employee puts in. Because there are various interests here. There's a shareholder's interest. A shareholder wants to get a return on the investment. The dividends have to be paid. The company wants capital injection from the profits that are made. The company wants to grow, and it needs to grow to create more jobs. The employee wants a good salary. So that good salary comes only when proper things are put in place. Management must do their work. They must do their part. They must properly look at avenues of expanding the company, how to motivate employees, all that. So each single party must not abuse the other. The employees are capable of abusing the company. They can go on a strike, illegal strike. When they go on illegal strike, the wheels of production cease to run. And if they are producing 100,000 bags a day for 3-4 days, that production line is closed. It's a loss on the company. The company would have suffered an irreparable damage. So these have to be understood in context. So it's not just one party. And as Ministry of Labour, I think we are looking at the whole spectrum. We are looking at all the players. We are balancing the equation. And that's how industrial harmony comes about. You don't look at issues with biasness. Yes, labor laws in most cases tend to favor the weaker party, who are the employees.
Yes.
But the weaker party must not take advantage of that by escalating it, even to the extent that even when they are wrong, they want to be praised. Even when they go on illegal strikes, they want Ministry of Labour to come and praise them. No, we wouldn't do that, because the law is clear that you cannot proceed on an illegal strike. It is an offense, especially if you're an essential worker. If you are like found staging a protest, the police officers can arrest you without warrant, or that you can be sanctioned to pay a fine. And if you are a unionist, you can be banned from holding office. So the law is trying to ensure that man hours are not lost. So that's the abuse we're talking about in terms of the employee. It shouldn't happen. That's why there's a structure for negotiations. Declare a dispute, then go to a third party. The third party will come and sit you down, do some conciliation processes, hear about the grievances, arrive at a decision. If another party is still aggrieved, you scale up. You can either conduct a strike ballot, which will be superintended by Office of the Labour Commissioner, or you can go to court so that the courts can arbitrate and arrive at a just decision. That's the process which is within the law. So if you sidestep that process, then you are abusing the other party, because it's a relationship. Employer-employee is a relationship. It must be balanced.
This brings us to the question for our previous caller, Mr. Chinza. Maybe we don't understand your role as government in terms of following the laws that are stipulated, because he said, move out of your comfort zone, tell your officers to go out on the ground and see what is happening. Could this clearly mean that we don't understand your role? Or do you have enough human resource to check these companies?
Yes, just in addition to what Sharon is putting across, we understand that the previous minimum wage that was revised, clearly from what Mr. Chinza was explaining, some of the provisions were companies did not enforce it because 800 was still below the minimum wage. But how are you going to ensure that there's compliance now that there's even a higher amount that has been allocated to these vulnerable groups of workers? How are you going to achieve compliance to ensure that your inspectors are on the ground to ensure that some of these companies are compliant, as well as the workers themselves reporting to say this is the situation at hand?
Okay, I think for starters, we have an inspections unit, and this inspections unit carries inspections on a daily basis. There is an inspection schedule that we approve every week, where these inspectors move as a team to go and check what the employers were doing, how the employees were working, whether the conditions are conducive, whether the environment in terms of sanitary are good, all that. And those are the instances where you have heard or seen us on the television where we suspend operations of the companies. You have seen us charging those penalties, and you have seen us giving directives that the employees must be paid their arrears for all those months where they were being underpaid. So this we have been doing, but perhaps where there are gaps is that we are thin on the ground. We cannot manage ordinarily in a day to go to all the companies in Lusaka. We cannot manage in a day to go to all companies in the country. And one unfortunate thing is employees want us to reach out to them all the time, and they have this perception that when you come to labor office you'll be fired, and employees are also holding firmly to that perception, when in fact it shouldn't be, because when an employee comes to labor office, they are asserting a right. They are trying to appreciate how the legal framework is sitting. They're trying to fully understand, and so they do not commit a dismissible offense by any standards. They are instead trying to assist the employer also to some extent to appreciate how the law is stated, because when they come to our office and submit or lodge those complaints, in trying to resolve that dispute, we look at the law, and when we are looking at the law, how it's stated, and comparing it with the facts that they would have brought, in the process the employee will be able to appreciate, and in the process the employer will be able to appreciate. So by reporting to our office, no one must be dismissed, and this we insist, this we have been guiding wherever we've gone, that these employees must not be dismissed. And so far, unless they are not reporting back, where we have gone to inspect or gave those directives as provided under the law section 10, we've not received some adverse reports. Employers have embraced our orientation. The employers have embraced our guidance. The employers have become better employers. They have formulated payment plans. They have devised mechanisms where employees are able to interact. Because at a place of work, there must be a grievance procedure. where employees can be able to engage management and air their grievances, submit their proposals, submit their plans for the company. But there must be that ownership. They must be motivated to wake up every morning to report for work. And this does not only come from without, it comes from the concerted efforts from the employer, recognizing the efforts that the employees are putting in the organization, recognizing that they are partners for purposes of ensuring that the company develops. So how are we going to deal with this? How we are going to deal with the adjusted minimum wages is to ensure that the law is complied with. How do we ensure that the law is complied with? Where there is failure to comply, the law empowers us to sanction employers. We can charge administrative penalties. For example, if employers choose to circumvent the law by not providing contracts in writing, the law states that where a contract is for 6 months or more, it shall be evidenced in writing. And where it is not evidenced in writing, the employer is liable to an administrative penalty. We shall do just that. Now, what benefits will it bring to the employer to pay a penalty when that money can be used to ensure that the company grows? These are the questions that the employers must ask. So we have been going around, but perhaps why there is this belief, sustained belief that we don't go out for inspections, that there's no visibility on the roads. We don't have branded vehicles. Our vehicles are ordinary. We don't have uniform. We are not like the police where you see the police van is passing. We are not like Ratsa where you see Ratsa van. We are not like Zesco. Perhaps going forward, we must have branded vehicles so that when we are passing, everyone is able to see, oh, there are the inspectors, they've entered that gate, and things will change. So it is perception more than the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is that we go out for inspections as and when we have transport, but out of the 116 districts in Zambia, we are only present in 54 districts. But there are positive signs because we are given 25 positions, out of which 17 were for the Labour Office of the Labour Commissioner. So already that expansion will begin to create the necessary positive impact going forward. And it is our wish that this will be progressively done so that at some point now we'll reach that optimal level, we'll reach that level where we shall be visible. We'll reach that level where employees will not believe that labor office is only for employees, because labor office is for the labor sector. We cannot begin to devise facts or twist facts so that an employee who has been dismissed for theft, all of a sudden when they come to labor, then they are exonerated and we begin to pursue the employer. No, that's not our space. So there must be appreciation and understanding of our jurisdiction, because that which the law doesn't give us, we cannot do. And people must appreciate that our roles, objects, can be summarized in two folds. One, where it is a contravention of any provisions of the Act, we have powers to give directives to remedy or suspend operations or fine an employer. Then the other pillar relates to a contract of employment. Now, when there's a dispute arising from the contract of employment, we do not have powers to give orders. Rather, our role is to mediate. And when you are mediating, it is the two parties that must agree and arrive at a decision where both of them embrace that decision. We are merely witnesses to that formulation of that agreement. And in most cases, this is where they say, labor office, you are toothless, because the employees expect us to give orders to fine. No, we don't have those powers of an arbitrate. We don't engage in adjudication. We are not a court of law.
I think we should have more of these conversations so that we get to understand your role. Otherwise, you'll be blamed every day for things that you're not supposed to be doing.
Exactly.
But let's bring in this issue of perception of labor inspectors. You say you have a number of them that go out there in the field. But then some of the stories, some of the information that we get from the public is that the labor officers connive with the employers. When they go, people report to say, okay, this is what is happening at our institution. We're probably not even having lunch. We're entitled to this. They're not giving us. But then your officers, when they go there, they enter the offices. You know, they come back and say, no, just go back to work. You know, they start warning the people who complained. So the perception out there is that they are conniving with the employers. What is the ministry doing about such reports, if at all you've received any?
Okay.
Or is there a punitive measure, for example, if an officer is caught in that situation?
Exactly, punitive measure it is there. Perhaps let me start from how you have packaged your question. You say that when they go there, they say, I mentioned that if the employees have gone on a legal strike, we must not shy away from implementing the law, administering the law. We must be able to be factual. We must make the employees understand that an illegal strike is not permissible under the law, and it has consequences.
Of which one can be fired?
One can be fired. Even in their code of conduct, the disciplinary code, it is clear that an employee can lose the job. It's an offense under the Act. So when the labor officer goes to tell them to say, guys, can you disperse, go back to work, allow your union members, if they are unionized, to continue negotiating with management. If a dispute is declared, let it follow the procedures in the law. That is not being corrupt. That is being upright. That is making the employees realize that there is legal framework. That is making the employees realize that lawlessness cannot be condoned. Rule of law is important. You have to follow the defined procedures within the law. So that is not corruption, if that's what you meant. Then in terms of seeing management, I think what employees are yearning for are solutions from management. Now, if you have been told that we do not receive payments according to the minimum wages, you already have a report as an inspector. Tell me, if you go to the premises of the employer, how are you going to verify? Firstly, you have to get the payroll, the pay slips. And after you get the pay slips, because you do not want employees to be singled out, because there are sellouts within employees also. There are groups that go back to management and report others. So you get that information, and that informer who would have said, oh, I don't want to be
named. I want to remain
just
anonymous.
like this caller said, I'm anonymous for whatever reason. So you call them at a later stage, they come to the office, and you say, oh, these are the papers, do you receive this? Then they say, no, this is a lie, we don't receive this copy. Then you make a follow-up inspection. Because you find that some of these people who say they don't meet us are the actual sellers who want to report to management, say it's that one, it's that one. So you have to be tactical. Because some investigations are so serious that the company may find itself in a lot of arrears. So much money has have to be paid to the employees. So if they will have to pay a lot of money, they will do anything to ensure that people are crushed. So we have to protect the interests of those that inform us. We meet employees from our offices. We meet employees from the streets. We meet employees through social platforms. They give us information. They tell us to say, okay, when you come, please don't talk to me. So the rest of the employees, when they say, oh, those are inspectors, themselves, they want you to talk to them. But the one who informed you say, oh no, these people are bad people, they did all this. So first, you have to make the employers have the right mind. You have to walk them through the law to say, we have come here because of this section. You are not going to fire the employees because look at this court judgment. The employees are merely trying to assert their right. They want to know exactly what is happening. Can we have this document? Can we have? It is a relationship. So we are not going there to make the employee fight the employer or the employer fight the employee. We have to bring these two parties together. So we must provide a cooling effect. So even when it's heated, we must find ways of making sure that the environment is not toxic, the environment is not hostile. So I would want to believe that the labor officers are professionals in their own right.
Punitive measures in case they're
punitive measures is like any other person when you are involved in these corrupt practices. We have the laws, the Anti-Corruption Act, and anyone who has information can leverage on that act and report the labor officers. I think they're not immune from that process of prosecution. That's all what we are saying. So instead of playing lip service, let's be practical and put things to bed. Where you have information, please proceed. There are instances where you guide professionally, and because the case has not gone in favor of this employee, and out of sour grapes, then they say, oh, you have been corrupted. How would you be corrupted to tell someone to say, look at this section? There is no dispute that has been declared. You cannot therefore stop work. Look at productivity. When you stop work, the company will suffer. What corruption is there in trying to explain to the employee? So this information gap must be cured. When we cure this information gap, then some of the expectations will be mitigated. Some of the expectations will be put in context, because we are given so much powers than what the statute book gives us. And that becomes a problem in itself. So that's why we're saying going forward, we must have the institute, which now tries to educate, worker education. The unions must pull up their socks. They must roll their sleeves and begin to educate the employees. These institutes, the labor practitioners, they must begin to educate the employers. Because some employers are contravening the laws, not because they want to, but because they don't even know what they're supposed to do. And this is apparent when you go out there to speak to them. Immediately you guide them, they now comply. They say, oh, we didn't know that. We are supposed to put a contract in writing, but we are paying them everything, so there's no problem. I say, no, yes, in your eyes there's no problem, but look at this provision of the law. It says you must provide a contract in writing. If you don't, administrative penalty. So those are some of the happenings out there in the labor market. So there is misapprehension of facts and the law, everything. So out of lack of understanding, someone arrives at a wrong conclusion.
They call you toothless.
Yes.
In case you are just joining us, we're in conversation with the Labour Commissioner, Mr. Givens Muntengwa, and we are discussing labour matters. You can call us or send us those text messages and ask those pertinent questions, especially regarding the minimum wage that was recently revised for the domestic workers, among others. There were 3 sectors, is it, Mr. Muntengwa?
Yes, there are
3 indeed. So you can ask that question that you so wish they can answer. They are the professionals, and they will respond to you according to the way it's supposed to be, using the law. Of course, not from his head, but he will quote the law. Patrick.
Yes, and we just want now to find out now where are we when it comes to NAPSA reforms? I remember having attended a meeting where you did indicate that that was among priorities of the government. And however, recently we had miscommunication, especially pertaining to the issue pertaining to the PSPF. And people thought those NAPSA reforms they were waiting for,
the much talked about,
had arrived, but it was another issue altogether. So now, I want to get where are we at the moment when it comes to NAPSA reforms?
Thank you so much. Before I get to NAPSA reforms, I think I did attend to the issue of the minister where someone was saying she's not going out to inspect. I think again, let's appreciate the mandate of the minister. Let's appreciate that the labor laws are under the administration of the labor commissioner. And in doing that, the law makes sure that the labor commissioner issues certificate of appointments to the labor officer. So it's not every employee in the ministry who works at the premises of the employer and begins to conduct an inspection. No. In terms of the minister, let's understand that the minister is a policymaker. Yes, from time to time she can go out there to meet the employees, get to hear what the employees are expressing. And in getting those views, the bigger picture is to ensure that going forward, there is policy change. Going forward, the law is changed. And not entirely the minister charging an administrative penalty, not the minister closing the premises. No, I think the Act is very specific. Who has those powers? So again, if there is this lack of understanding, you expect the minister to go to a company and pronounce herself to say your salaries are increased by so much. That is not the role of the minister. It is not done in that manner. Rather, it's only done in instances where the employees are vulnerable, and that is the process I was explaining in the beginning. So because of these high expectations, because of giving all the powers to the minister, because of expecting the minister to be the chief negotiator, when she doesn't negotiate for you, you think she has failed in her mandate. No. Let's understand the mandate of the minister. Let's understand that the minister sits in cabinet, among other things, to look at policy, devise, come up with policy, formulate policy and ensure policy implementation by the technocrats. And then secondly, she sits in cabinet to approve bills before they are introduced into Parliament or National Assembly. And then when she goes to Parliament, she becomes a legislator. Those are the functions of the minister. But from time to time, she would go out, like the other week, last week in fact, she went to Curfew ST, interacted with the employees, heard from the employees their grievances, all that, and then gave guidance on how we should implement it. That's how it's supposed to be, because if the minister is supposed to be out there every day, why do you have technocrats? Why do you have these structures? Why do you have the law? Why does he go to the parliament to make these laws? Why does cabinet formulate policy? Who implements? Because you have to look at the constitution. A state organ, state institution, shall implement public policy, Article 173. And who are these organs? It's ourselves, the technocrats, and that's why you say you support government every day, because through that implementation, you are being supervised. He's a supervisor. The supervisor cannot always be in front of those that are supposed to do the job. At times they stand at a distance to see what is happening. So it's not always that they must be pushed to be everywhere. And she's only one person, but the ministry has so many technocrats. You have directors of productivity, social security, all that. Yeah, now coming to
NAPSA reforms.
NAPSA reforms, yeah. So you saw that NAPSA amendment.
Yes.
That NAPSA amendment is historical. historical because you had Zambia National Provident Fund, which had members at the time that the NAPSA Act was operationalized in 2000, and those members came with their own terms and conditions into this scheme, NAPSA. Now, years later, NAPSA has come to the realization that the benefits that they came with are not sustainable. They've run out of the capital injection, the contribution that they come with, but they've given them an option to access their monies. Obviously not taking away what they have accrued, but they've merely said that if you have clocked 36 by calculation from 1996, then you can go and withdraw your money so that the account is closed. Then there was an issue of interest where, based on the terms and conditions that the minister will prescribe, these companies, and that's the relief now to the employers. The employers have been owing National Pension Scheme, NAPSA, a lot of money in unremitted member contributions, and by law there was 20% charged on unremitted amounts. And now this amendment has reduced that penalty from 20 to 10%. That's the amendment which went through. And then further, it has also empowered NAPSA, of course, from the terms and conditions that the minister will prescribe, to write off the amounts, the outstanding amounts, when you meet the criteria that will be contained in the statutory instrument. Now, this amendment must be distinguished from the amendment which now relates to the NAPSA members. The NAPSA members from 2000 up to date. And this process of review is still being drafted. And hopefully within the first quarter of next year, we hope it will go to Parliament, so that now it will speak to those issues of early access to pension benefits. I think that's where we are.
Great stuff indeed there. We are even coming to a close of our interview. Patrick, you have the last questions?
Yeah, interesting. So we just I think as we come to the end of our interview, we just want to get an overview on where we stand on the labor force as at the moment in terms of employment. Where do we stand as a country?
Do you have those stats?
Off the cuff, I'll not give those statistics, but we're always riding on the good steps or strides taken by government. We always talk about what has never happened.
The 30,000, the 10,000.
Yes, because the government showed the way.
Yes.
They led the way. And so we're expecting industry, having come up from the COVID pandemic period, slowly, although again it's like we are...
It's coming back.
Yeah, it's coming back. So we are expecting that there will be positive growth, especially with the injection of those huge amounts in the communities through the CDF. So the enterprises at that lower level, those who can make blocks, those that who can do carpentry work, make desks, government has released funds. So based on that, there will be this job creation, sustainable jobs, so that at the end of the day, people will be able to form cooperatives, they'll be able to form companies, they'll be able to recruit more. So we are expecting jobs to be created just by taking advantage of government's policy, government's bold step to increase the funds at that level. Because now those who can be taken to colleges, trade schools, these vocational training institutions will be able to have that skill and immediately have that skill and begin to engage in these enterprises. Then that job creation will start from that lowest level, and it will have that positive spiral effect up to the national level. Yeah, so I think that's what I can say.
Concluding remarks.
Concluding remarks is the labor sector out there must not stay away from recognizing that Ministry of Labor administers laws as enacted by Parliament. Ministry of Labor has a mandate as provided for in those laws. Let us know that Ministry of Labor is not the chief negotiator. Ministry of Labor only comes to sit down the parties when there's a contractual dispute, so that the parties can understand and appreciate the terms and conditions which they agreed by themselves. And in doing that, Ministry of Labor cannot all of a sudden be expected to give orders. We are not a court of law. However, where there's a contravention of any provision of the law, then there we can provide guidance, we can make directives, we can provide corrective measures, we can provide remedial measures, whatever name you call them, and in doing that, if there is failure by the employer to comply, the law makes it an offense. Yes, under section 10, subsection 8, it makes it an offense if you fail to comply. So when you begin to appreciate that on one hand we mediate, then in terms of the law we have powers to give directives, then you begin to know where your problem should fit. And when you come up with a problem relating to the Act, when we come out in the manner that we've come out, you will then not blame us if we come out differently when we are looking at the contract, because we would have appreciated the law. So let's cure this information gap by embracing the laws that we made for ourselves. Then there will be no unnecessary accusations, counter-accusations, finger-pointing, or what have you. And overall, Ministry of Labor is there to ensure that there is industrial harmony, and in doing that, the employer, employee, and the company have rights, and those rights have to be recognized, and no single party, no single element within this tripartism of employer, company, employee must abuse one another. They must work towards a common goal. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Mr. Muntenga, for gracing our screens. To the viewers that took time to watch this program, and also those that made their effort to call and text us, thank you so much for choosing us. Join us again tomorrow on The Business for Breakfast. Good morning.